So welcome everybody. The picture that you see up on the screen currently is last week's Regional Training Academy in San Diego. We had about 40 some people from all over the world actually. We had people from Korea, South Korea, and Puerto Rico join us for this event, and this is the class photo. It was just a tremendous success, a lot of great feedback, and wanted to share that with everybody participating today. Also want to give a shout out to some familiar names I see here. I know Doug, you've been on many virtual Thursdays, and of course some friends here, Nancy out in Michigan, Roger Parker out in Colorado, and Tim, if I remember Tim, you're in Arkansas, if I remember correctly, so it's good to see you. And if I forgot to mention anybody, please forgive me. I'm just kind of looking at names of people I've worked with and friends I made. Oh, Chief Mara out in Florida. Joe, it's good to have you on board today. So we'll make this a good event. We're going to focus on the administration module. We're going to actually cover, and I'll talk about Cleveland here in a minute. We're going to cover everything on the right side here. We're going to deep dive into every aspect of this part of the administration module today. I've got a couple wingmen with me today. If I'm Maverick, they're my goose. And we've got Michael Bazzoni. He's our brand new, one of our brand new trainers based out of Missouri. So Michael, very good to have you with us today. He's going to deep dive into the personnel section with you, and then helping out to answer questions. As an added bonus today is one of our other full-time regional trainer, Mark Wolf. He's with us, and he'll be helping to answer questions. So welcome everybody. If there's any issues with audio or video, just please send out a question or a chat, and we'll be sure to correct it. But seeing that I'm not here having any issues now from anyone, it looks like we're on the path to a good hour here. So again, welcome. This is our 8th virtual Thursday of 2017. The topic is the administration module, mastering the admin module part 1, and today we're going to spend the hour covering everything on this side of the system here in admin. And so this is like your control panel, the heart and the brain of the account where you manage high level settings. Before we jump in, I just want to announce we're almost sold out our Regional Training Academy in Cleveland. So you saw the group picture from the one from San Diego. We've got one coming up in Cleveland, Ohio from July 25th through the 27th, and we're just about sold out. There's a handful of seats available. So if you're interested, I will just send this link through the chat. You can explore it and take a look, and if you're able to come, we would love to see you there. Like I said, there's about a half a dozen seats left. So again, take a look at it, study it, and see if it's something you're able to come and join us with. They become each one becomes more and more successful as we're going through it. So 2017 has been a really great year for us when it comes to regional training academies. And we used to call them conferences, and now we're kind of focusing on more academies. We're going to have different tracks now for beginners and for advanced users, and just taking it to the next level. So, all right, that's my plug for our free training today, and let's go right into the administration module. And as we're doing this, please don't hesitate. If you have, of course, questions, as always, just chime in with questions, or if you have some best practices you want to share with the group on how you've done some things here, please chime in. We would really appreciate hearing from you on that. Okay, so what I like to do when I first talk about these settings is to go to drop-downs first, because you're going to build your drop-down lists, okay? And a lot of these drop-down lists are going to drive what you do in the personnel section. And so this is a good place to visit first. And what I usually do is I ignore the pre-filled default codes, because those are already pre-filled for you. And a lot of times you're going to customize these different drop-downs anyway. But I will touch here just briefly to let you know that you can go in and select for the various modules the pre-filled drop-downs. Now we're focused on admin, so you've got ranks, divisions, shifts, station zones, and daily log activity codes that we do a pre-fill for you, and then you can actually view the ones that you have not selected to see if you want to select them or not. It's not frequently used, but I do want to put it out there as something you can do. And then you also have pre-filled drop-downs for hydrants. Don't even bother with maintenance anymore, because our new maintenance module, this is kind of for the old maintenance before we had subcategories, so just don't even go there with the maintenance. Occupancy, yes, that's still good. and these pre-filled drop-downs are available to you. You can turn them on and off. Inspections, types and results, permits, roster, and events. Again, this is not one we spend a lot of time in because I always like to teach the customer to go in and customize it to meet their department's needs. Okay, so that's the pre-filled default code list. If any questions, just chime in. Under the business list, really the key takeaway here on business list is this. Any business that you add here that you want to be part of the maintenance module needs to be a vendor. All right, it's part of the original programming of this part of our system that if you don't select vendor, so if you select other or contractor, that business won't appear in the maintenance module as a potential assignee for work orders. Okay, so make sure it's a vendor and it's going to work fine with the maintenance and of course inventory module if you're using the inventory module for disposables and consumable supplies. If you select contractor, that only appears in the occupancy module under fire protection systems. So it's pretty isolated, but again, if you're going to work with and you can enter a vendor or a business twice, both as a vendor and a contractor. Say they work on your sprinkler systems for your stations and facilities, and they also do it for businesses in the community. You could enter them both here and then assign a contractor within the fire protection systems tab of the occupancy module. But this is a nuance that if you didn't know it, you could find it in help here because it explains what that does right here in our help section, but it's not that. Let's go into, so under the business list, if you were to click the business list here in help, it tells you where selecting that type, where it appears in our system. Other doesn't even apply. I think that was put there and then maybe with plans to do it in other modules but never materialized. So just to kind of a trick of the trade, and I'm sure many of you experienced users know this, but if you're new to the system and just wanted to get your administration module tip-top and tip-top shape, that's just a key takeaway. Okay, I'm going to come back to the master street list. Under the rank list, okay, this is where you create your ranks that you can assign to individuals. And so what I always like to talk about is, okay, so here's what we put into the system. What does it mean what do we get out of this? So what I like to show you as examples when I'm doing my onboardings with customers is that here, if we go into rank, you can see there's a handful of reports that pull from rank. Now I absolutely recommend using rank and assigning ranks to people, but then you can see that you can run reports based on what you select in rank. So if I want to see, this is actually a particularly good report, and so you'll see me bounce a little bit between admin and reports because I want to be able to show you what what you do on the front end, how it delivers the goods on the back end. Let me just pause for a second. We've got a question here. Okay, so Doug asks, I have businesses listed as contractor and they show in maintenance. Okay, well, are you sure? Because then something may have changed that they didn't tell us. Because are you sure they're not also listed as a vendor? Because in the drop down list, if I select contractor, they don't appear in the maintenance module. So maybe Doug, do you have? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I can confirm he's exactly correct.
So that's new. That's
new. Maintenance module, both contractors and vendors will appear in the vendor list.
Well, it would have been nice if they told us that. Did they ever tell you that?
I saw that and asked Bob Burton, and he advised me of that a while back. Yeah.
Hey, so that's outstanding. So they kind of fixed that whole legacy thing, and that's outstanding. So I guess at this point, everybody, it doesn't matter whether you have it as a vendor or a contractor. All right. Well, that's good news. Thanks, Doug, for the heads up on that. That's actually really good to know. So see, we may be experts, but we're always learning something new from our customers. So way to go. Thanks, Doug. All right, back to reports. So here you can run reports. And the one that I always like to share when I'm teaching customers how to set up their permission settings that Mike's going to go over here in a bit is under report number 986. Instead of having to go in person by person to see what privileges you've granted them, you can just run this report and it breaks it out by rank in a tabular format to let you see what permissions you've granted to each person based on their rank. And so it's a quick at-a-glance way to make sure you're applying consistent permission settings to the different members of your organization as you're building or editing your administration account in the personnel section. All right, back over here. That's ranks. Okay. Now shifts. Shifts are intended for primarily career departments. However, I have seen some creative uses for volunteer departments. So here typically you would add A shift, B shift, and C shift. And these are not where you actually build shifts in the shifts module. This is an independent table in the database. And so this is not where you build shifts. This is where you assign people to a shift. And that is what's going to appear here in these reports. Okay. And so you can see active personnel per agency for shift. That's where it's drawing from within the administration module. Okay. Likewise, the shifts that are assigned to incidents. And as you probably know, in an incident report, the person completing the report, their shift will autofill on basic info 1 of an incident report. They can change it certainly if they're on a different shift, but when you run reports for average response time per shift, that's where it's pulling from, not from the shifts module. The shifts module is where you create a staffing model and then use your daily rosters and fill your rosters from those ideal shifts. And that will be a topic for another Virtual Thursday to be sure, but that's, I just wanted you to be clear that when you, in almost all of our reports where you see shift, it's pulling from the shifts in administration. And it's the same one, so just so you can see this, let me open this up in another tab. Just so you're aware, like on incidents, that shift is not from the shift module when you add a new report or a new incident report. It's you create the shifts, whoops, you create the shifts here. And now we only have, because this is our demo account, there's only one that says all, but yours will probably have A, B, and C shift. And then what I have seen volunteer departments do is that they block it out by time of day. So their shifts are like A, B, and C, but it's from like 0600 to noon, depending on how they break out their particular time periods during the day. And so that's an alternative way to use the shifts here in our system. So Mike or Mark, do you have any other creative ways that you've seen customers use the shifts?
Not particularly. Again, more familiar with and see mostly the ABC shift, but like you said, volunteer, that is a good way to break down the shifts, doing by time periods.
Because they can then still supplement these reports and use it by time of day. But we do have time of day and hour of day and reports for incidents. But again, that's just another way they can supplement it, knowing that they don't have a strict and 3-platoon system type of scheduling.
Hey Tom, what I've seen, if I can jump in here for just a moment,
sure.
is, I do a lot of the DoD training accounts. I don't know if we have any DoD folks out there, but some of those facilities use the 7-group system where they'll have 3 of the 7 groups working in a day. So I've seen them split it up that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll label it 135 because they have, those of you, if you're not DoD, they have a very unique schedule where their crews work the same day with the same people during a pay period. So every 14 days, it's the same group of people that are working together in many DoD installations. And so not only do they build their shifts that way, but they also label them here that way as well. All right. Questions at all on shifts? Pretty straightforward, but again, I like to show you what you can get out of it here, so I'll be going to the reports module regularly. Okay, station list. The key takeaway on stations is this, okay? You add a station for every physical facility, but this here could also be called stations/logbooks because this is what drives your logbook on the home page. Okay, so whatever station is indicated here, that's the logbook you're making entries for. Now, if your department permits the user to change their station and shift, whatever station they change themselves to, that's the logbook they're entering. So what I have seen a lot of departments do in their wisdom is that if they have prevention and admin and station 1 operations all at the same physical facility, go ahead and create virtual stations, one called Station 1 Ops, Station 1 Admin, Station 1 Prevention, and so each of those divisions, so to speak, have their own unique logbook. Okay, and so that way you're not commingling everything admin does with everything the guys at the station do, or prevention does with admin, and it gives them their own independent logbook. And so that's a perfectly acceptable way and actually a best practice in making use of stations. So when you're here, remember it's stations/logbooks, and it doesn't matter if there's virtual stations here, and it's actually encouraged. Any other thoughts on that, guys? Mark or Mike?
No, sir.
Okay, and when you go to add a station, so I'm just going to show you the editing here. Be sure to check that if it's manned, that you check this box, so personnel can be added to that station via the rosters. It's optional to put your zone in there, and then get the correct address, because if you have the Google Maps integration, then it will show on a map, and we have a unique icon, not on this page, but on the page where you have incidents and hydrants. There's a unique icon to identify where your stations are, so it allows you to be able to it allows you very effectively to be able to demonstrate to your community, hey, we've got this station here and we're running a cluster of calls, but we've got another really big cluster of calls over here, and then we got long response times. So it's a great visual tool. Mike asks, if you don't allow your firefighters to change the shift, will you be able to see all the logs no matter what shift they're on? Great question. So what Mike's asking, and I hope I'm understanding the question correctly, is that some departments choose not to turn this on, and that's fine. If your people move around and you need them to make entries into a logbook, the administrator would then have to go into admin, which Mike will show you here in a minute, and actually change that station. Okay? And then going to Mike's question, whatever station you're assigned to here is what you're going to see in this logbook, but you can go and show for all stations and be able to see everybody's station. Which anytime you add it to the log, you're going only to be adding to your station. And then when Mike talks about permissions, especially for the daily log, that's a good one as a good example. When you give people limited permissions in the daily log, you're actually doing a really good thing. And Mike will touch on that when he gets to his part of the presentation. Great question. Does that answer it, Mike? Excellent.
Hey, Tom, one thing I wanted to, one thing, if I can jump in just a second, just to make sure when you're adding your stations, like I totally agree with what Tom's saying, putting those in, like if you've got different people, to make sure the daily log is there. But if you're not having a CAD interface or something, they need to make sure, just to make sure you tell your people that when they're entering calls, those stations are all going to be listed in your drop down in the instance, just making sure they're picking the correct one, so your instance don't get off. If you do not have a a CAD link or something in there that's going to push that over. You agree, Tom, what I was talking about there?
Yeah, I don't, with the CAD interface, if it pushes your shift, then it's auto-filled for you. But also, if you're the report writer and go to that page, it should auto-fill your shift anyway.
Depending on if you're like on the first page.
Yeah, it's going to fill. So when you go to start a report, if you don't have a CAD interface, and I go to do a report, this is going to auto-fill. Now, if the CAD pushes it, it should be correct. And so if it's correct, then you don't have to change it. But you can change it. You can change it if you need to, because anything that the CAD pushes can be overwritten by the user. So
I was thinking if it wasn't in there, that they'd show up blank. I was thinking, or the whole list is in there.
Yeah, the whole list. Yeah, the whole list will be in there.
Yeah, they just need to make sure that it's picking the correct station that they're at, in case if they don't have in other words, that whole list of stations plus your virtual stations are going to be in there. Just make sure they're picking the right one.
And they'll autofill. So as long as the report writer has a station and shift assigned to them, it's going to autofill these fields anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so a question from Scott. I have personnel that do not have the add to log button on their home screen. So what that probably means, so back here, if they don't have this button, then they don't have permissions to add. They probably have no access to the daily log if this button doesn't appear, because even if they have limited privileges, they can add to the log. They just can't edit anybody else's. And so limited and full will have this button. So I would check their privileges, Scott, and if they have no access to the daybook, or I'm sorry, the daily log, I think it's daybook or daily log, how it's listed in that in the daybook, then it won't appear. So double check that and let us know.
And I plan on going over that too, so we'll give you a run.
Okay. Next up, so this one's a big one to me. Zone list. All right. Of course, we don't have an example, but I'm going to give you an example because I've got a really good one to show you. Give me just a second to load it. The zones, these are zones only for, ton of tabs here. These are zones only for the incidents module, but we have a proverbial boatload of reports that pull from zones for incidents, and this is a great way to tell your story to the community and to your bosses, stakeholders, where you're running your calls. So give me a second here, and I'm going to pull up one for a department that they do a great job, and this is going to look familiar to one of our participants today. I just happen to know that this is a good list, and I can show you another one from Fort Bragg. Theirs is outstanding, but this is my friends in Avondale, Arizona, and they just nailed it. And I know I can explain this, and Roger can chime in too, that one of the neat things that they've done on their zones is because of community risk reduction, they want to use it by census tract as well. And so give me just a second, guys. I'm pulling it up. So their list of zones. Where did it go? There we go. Their list of zones are really good. And it's just one example. There's no set way of doing this, okay? But this is one example, and I know the one from Fort Bragg, they break it down into very specific geographical areas. But here you've got an ID and a description, but then the prefix in front of it is your census tract as well. And so then when you're doing a community risk analysis, you can go to the census tract on the Census website, the Census Bureau website, and kind of cross-check what you're running versus what the risks are, the demographics of that particular census tract, and then start making a case for enhancing your community's safety through risk reduction. And so this is just one example of how you can set your zones up. So if you're not making use of zones, you're missing out on an opportunity to really tell your story in a more powerful manner. So I really spend time here and saying, if you have it set up now, great, in whatever system you were using, or if you're planning on going for like accreditation, do an ISO, or just want to know in detail where these calls are, how well your response times are into particular areas, then the zones are the place to do it. And it's as simple as adding a code in the zone title, and it will then populate in your incidents module and then allow you to run reports per or for zone within the reports module. And Lisa, yeah, Avondale does have a CAD link. They got the Northrop Grumman CAD system out in the Phoenix metro area, and we do receive their data actually quite nicely. Any questions on zones? Okay, so next up, time flies. Okay, next up we've got our neighboring agencies list. So here's my recommendation on neighboring agencies list. This is a relatively new feature. Any neighboring agency appears in a checkbox list on page 5 of an incident report. Okay, and so what I do is I recommend any fire department. So we're going to call this ER. Let's call this Bellingham because we're the ER fire department. And so I also put here, and this is a trick that I mentioned to our customers, is put in, not that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put in their FDID here as well as here, because this ID does not appear on that checklist on basic info 5 of an incident report. But if you put it in parentheses, and if you give A to a department, NFIRS wants that FDID, and if they're not another ER customer, you're going to need to know that. And this gives it to the report writer right there and then. Then, of course, you select the type. I would put in here, and it's important to know that we don't yet have a report that pulls from this, but I know we will at some point. And so start using this, because if you want to see how many times you run with neighboring agencies, including law enforcement, EMS, tow companies, utility companies, can make a really great case for joint training. It can make a great case for relationship building. And so you just simply, it's as simple as adding the data entry here. You don't need both, just either the FDID or the EMS ID. And it's not even required, but it's good to have. And then put it in parentheses. And the reason I say that is right here in an incident report. Really quickly, so it'll open up my other pages. On page 5, right down here, you can see, we ran it with Bellingham, and that's their FDID. It comes in really handy when you have to give aid, because NFIRS wants that number. And so that's just a little trick there to keep in mind. All right, that covers everything in Dropdowns. All right, I'm going to bounce up quickly to Apparatus List before I pass this over to Mike. Any questions or any other comments on the Dropdowns list? Any other best practices out there that you guys want to share? Okay, Natalie, let's see here. We've just recently started using CAD interface, and now on the daily log, it is automatically putting in cover 8 callback. Do they need to change this each time, or is this an issue that needs to be fixed? Okay, so Natalie, what you need to do, and I'm thinking this is what's happening, is, and this will be for part 2 next week, so we'll get just a quick preview here. Double check your default activity codes, and when they complete an incident report, see what you have listed here on their default incident response activity code. Okay, if they've got cover 8 callback, that's probably what's listed here. I'm guessing that's what's taking place, because when the CAD pushes calls, the only thing possible is that when the incident is completed by the report writer, it auto-populates into the daily log itself. And Mark Wolf will be going over this part of the admin 2 weeks from today. So I'll check that out. Let us know if that solves it, if that's where where you're getting that automatic fill of cover 8. Great question. All right, any other best practices you guys have from Dropdowns here? All right, seeing none, let's head over to Apparatus. Okay, Apparatus, really the biggest takeaways here is it looks like a lot, but I would put in as much information as you can here. And part of that reasoning is you can, and NEMSIS kind of throws a wrench into the works a little bit, but these are required fields, and this is part of the demographic set for the NEMSIS data. So go ahead and enter your apparatus, and the couple key takeaways here: your vehicle number, that is your shop number, last 4 your VIN, fleet number, whatever you call it in your jurisdiction. That stays with it for the life of the vehicle. It can be called engine 2 tomorrow, but it still stays vehicle 1, 2, 3, 4. So use that, even though it's not a required field, use that. And the reason I say that is here in this report. And the best way to go to it is through maintenance, and then click on reports here. And we have a report now, 1699. Oh, no, not that one. This one, 1697. Apparatus maintenance history for vehicle number for date range. So not only can I search by apparatus call sign, I can also search by vehicle number as well. So it could be engine 2 for half of its life and engine 1 for the other half. I just want to run it for the vehicle number, and it's going to give me a continuous report of when it was engine 1, when it was engine 2, and you have its full fleet maintenance history there. So that's why that field, I think, is very important. We should almost make it required, but it's not NEMSIS or NFIRS required. I would make it a different color so it stands out. And then the other ones I like to recommend is your vehicle initial cost, date in service, and when you expect to replace it, because you can run a report. You can run a report called and keyword search replacement. And this, again, guys, I apologize. That's not like fantastic data here since it's a demo account, but I can run 1280 to give me my whole fleet list at a glance and have that either as a PDF. And so all of these data points that you put in for that piece of apparatus will appear here. And so the more complete it is, the better, in my view. And then the other report is this one. This is a particularly good one because you can say, hey, I'm planning my budget for 2018 to 2020, run this report, and any vehicles that are due for replacement will show its ID, so call sign, vehicle ID, station assignment, the actual cost that you put in this field right here, okay, whoops, right here, and it will give you kind of a jump-in point for planning your budget for capital expenses, or at least as it pertains to vehicles. And other than that, this is really just a lot of data entry. This other section here where it's in or out of service and the NFPA compliance required is tied to safety analytics, the apparatus gauge, which is it's an add-on to your account. Everybody for safety analytics gets the wellness behavior gauge and the organization gauge, but these two fields drive the gauge for apparatus and safety analytics. And then this one also, when a vehicle's in and out of service, also drives our new report that lets you measure the out of service time. I like to go to this page only because it's easy to find reports. So this one, 1702, gives you, not that one, that's for equipment. We want apparatus. Oh, that is 1702, apparatus, I should say, out of service time for category, subcategory for date range. This one, 1700, so that actually needs to go down. Apparatus out of service time for apparatus ID, that's going to give you your out of service time, and that's driven by when you click in service and out of service and in service. The time starts when you click out of service, time stops when you click in service, and then you can run a report to ascertain how many days, hours, or minutes that the truck was out of service. That's report 1700. So like I said, I kind of go between what you set up in admin and what you do here drives what you get out of the system later on. Okay, I think that's really it here. I always like putting a picture in for the apparatus because it shows up here really nicely as you're looking through this, especially if you have a big fleet and you need to say, well, which truck is that? You can put a picture with it, and that, I think, is really the nuts and bolts for apparatus. So with that, I'm going to answer Doug's question here as I pass the screen over to Mike. And Mike, it's all yours, my friend, to go into personnel. And let me take a look. Before you do that, I'm going to take a look at Doug's question. So when I view maintenance history for apparatus, the vehicle number, pump, model, manufacturer, and in-service data are all blank. I have filled in this info. Is it a glitch? What report number are you running, Doug? And I'll take, while Mike's talking, I'll go ahead and zoom your screen in a little bit, Mike, and then I'll go ahead and take a look at your account and see if that report's broken. So just put in that report number again to make sure I get the right report, and I get to go dig into and just put in the name of your department for me, and that way I can go directly into your account while Mike's talking, because we're right at the halfway point. And one thing to keep in mind, guys, I got an NCO with the customer at the top of the hour, so I will have to leave right at the top of the hour to go help a brand new customer get set up in their account. So if I have to bail abruptly, it's just because I got to go. It got scheduled back to back. So, yeah, Doug, send me your name of your account, name of your department, and your that report number. And Mike, go ahead and take it all away. Natalie, whoops, hang on one second, Mike. Natalie has a question. I just like to verbalize it because we're recording this, and so not everybody gets to see the questions when they view this as a recording. So Natalie's going, okay, it's set for cover 8 callback. So what Natalie's saying is over here in admin, it is set default activity code. That's why her incidents are showing cover 8 callback. So Natalie, what you're going to need to do is either create one or find an activity code for the daily log that is going to be called incident or alarm or whatever you'd like to call it, and set it to that one. Then from now on, every time an incident is completed by a report writer, it's going to be the correct one. So Mike, can you pull that up real quick on your list for your default activity codes so she can see it? I'm pointing on my screen and like nobody's watching my screen anymore. So right there, Natalie, is where you want to change it, because if it says cover 8, it needs to be like alarm response or incidents. You can create whatever you want there, but just remember it's an umbrella category every time an incident is completed and added to the daily log. Does that make sense?
Looks like we got a couple more questions, Tom, coming in.
Let's start nailing those. This is outstanding that we're getting so many good questions today. I love it. All right. St. Mary's. Okay. St. Mary's Fire Department, Doug, I'll look at that. Can we retroactively add or remove a vehicle from service or put it back into service? Okay, so adding and removing is different from putting it in and out of service, Anthony. Do not, in my recommendation. So, Mike, you're going to be my drive. You're going to drive. Do not delete apparatus from here, because that's hard delete. Or you want to manage your trucks. If say they go on loan somewhere. You sell a truck. Anytime you dispose of a truck, I would archive it. And so Mike's going to do a quick detour into that.
So you'll go up here to the top of the apparatus, and you'll find the specific apparatus you're talking about. So we'll say engine 2R. If we want to archive it, we go over here. We'll hit the archive apparatus file box. We'll select archive, and now it's archived. Now let's say you want to go get it back. Same process. You'll be in the maintenance module. Now you'll go to this upper file cabinet, click it open, and find engine 2R. There it is. And click the revert back arrow. So now it's unarchived and it's back in service.
Perfect, Mike. Perfect. Thank you. All right, we'll press on, and I'm going to look up, do a little research here for cheap airs in. Oh, it looks like Mark might be doing it in, but I'll do it too. For him, and see what we've got going there. So go into personnel, and that'll be perfect.
All right. So we'll kind of give you the nuts and bolts and a quick run through here. Admin module, 2 different choices you can select. You got the personnel list and settings. So we'll go to personnel list. I will add a new person, and I'll kind of show you mine in the demo account how it's set up. So if you want to add a person, add up top there. So as you probably know, anything in red is an important topic or important title. So you got to input information there. So there's a wealth of information you can add into here. The more you put in, the better for whatever your department chooses to do so. So what Tom was talking about earlier, your division lists are here. Station, if they're assigned to a certain station, active duty. The fit for duties for our full safety analytics customers, but they always, depending on what you want to choose, you can choose that. Start dates, always pretty important. Keeps it running tab of how long they've been on the job. Employment status, any information you want to put in there is in there, depending on what your record keepings are. If you are a EMS department, if you have a specific EMS ID, add it there also, and cover that. Down here at the bottom, we're going to talk about the pay grade. So there's default training pay grade and default working pay grade. If you haven't set up a pay grade, I'll show you how to do it in a couple minutes here. We don't want to bounce around too much, but always select we'll create a default one. Always select it here if for reporting purposes down the road it'll help out. So we're going to make John Smith a captain. And at this point, we're going to click save. When you click save, it's going to open up these 5 additional tabs up top. I also got to do my cliche. You can upload a picture. This is always fun for new employees. You can see how you age in 5, 10, 20 years. So I'm gonna add a picture real quick. And hopefully it doesn't take too long. I'm gonna press save. Now this person's got a picture. That's Tom Lewis there, if you guys ever want to know what he looks like. So from this point forward, we're gonna go on these next additional tabs up top here. So we're gonna go to security tab. System access level. I didn't know if you're off.
Yeah, no,
System access. So this would be if you want to give the member no access or has access. So obviously your no access members will be your members that are terminated or not currently anymore working for the department. And your has access obviously is ones who have access. As soon as you hit the has access, it opens up a login screen. So what you're going to want to do now is you're going to create a unique login for the individual. So depending on what your department uses, if you have a standard setup or if you want to use a specific key pattern, I like to call it. But if you use a standard setup, if I type in Smith John, more than likely there's probably going to be a Smith John in the system here. So we're going to try to go ahead and click change password. It's going to tell me the login value has already been selected. So the thousands and thousands of ER customers, there's already a Smith J in there. So what I kind of recommend is you can kind of either use a last name. So we'll use last name, and you can use first initial and middle initial. So we're going to call him Smith J.A., see if he's in there. So there you go. So we know that's a good fit there. So as you're creating personnel for your department, it's going to give you initially you're going to have to give them a temporary password. You got to meet all these criteria for the password. So we typically recommend using a generic standard password, and you can make them change it upon their first login. So we like to use capital Q, WE, 1, 2, 3, and then exclamation point. Again, 2, 2, 3, exclamation point. So we're going to click change password. So let's say it's been updated. So now whenever John Smith goes in to log in, he's going to have to input that password, capital Q, WE, 1, 2, 3, exclamation point. Our next step before doing that also is we want to click reset password. So what that's going to do is that's going to force John to reset his password on his first login. So he's going to have to change his password from the QWE. We're going to go down to the incident access level. So this is only for the incident module. So you have 4 different levels of security or permissions, and you hear that term used quite a bit here in the next couple of minutes. So the first one is no access, meaning they're not allowed to enter calls. You have a submitter who can enter calls. You got a supervisor who can enter and review calls. And typically, you like to recommend those, usually your captains, lieutenants, anybody who's kind of doing the QA for your department. And then you have administrators who can enter, review, and unlock exported calls. So these are pretty much your chief level officers who can do full access to the whole program. So we recommend to keep this kind of to a minimum because you don't want everybody having complete access to the system. Now you can come down here further and limit access to certain modules. And I think it was, I remember whose question it was, but I'll get to it here in a second.
Daily log?
You have, yeah, the daybook access. So we'll talk about it here in just a second there. So you have all the different modules. So these are what shows up on the left side of the screen. So let's say John Smith is a chief officer, or we gave him captain. So we're not going to give him administration access, meaning he's not going to have access to the admin tab, but he can have access. Whatever you give him access to here is what's going to show up on the left side of his screen. So we're going to give John access to the calendar, full access to the daily roster, full access to the daybook, and then so forth. We'll talk about each one as we go through. Now you may see a couple of them have limited here. There are 6 modules that have the choice of limited. And what limited means, there's a couple ways you can get to it. You can go up to the top of the screen. There's a support button. Click the support button. The little, I call it the lifesaver or the life preserver vest spring. You can come up here. The support screen will bring up to you where the knowledge base articles. You can search through there, or you can search by using keywords. Another way you can do is you can click the help button. And that's going to show you, what that's going to do is they're going to bring up help of exactly of what screen you're looking at right now. So you see we're looking at the security tab. So that's going to give us help, everything that's on that current screen. So you scroll down to the bottom, this is a pretty good chart here. It tells you exactly what each module, depending on what access you give them, allows them to do. So for instance, we'll talk about the daybook access, since that was one of them. Apparently, if you can see the add to log button, that person has no module access there. So the admin will have to go in and give them access if you want them to have access to add entries in the daily log. You'll have full, read only, and limited. So full is obviously your captains, your lieutenants, your officers, shift officers, depending on what you use, can add, modify daily log entries. There's no limitations to that. There's a read only where they're only allowed to read the entries. They can add or modify their own logins. I'm sorry, their own entries. And then limited or very minimal. They can only add to the daily log. They can only delete and modify their own personal entries up to 48 hours. They can't delete or modify anybody else's. So that's that in a nutshell.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to jump in real quick just to answer Doug's question. So I think he found a defect. Go do me a quick favor here so we can answer Doug's question. Open up another tab real quick, the maintenance module.
Go back to maintenance module.
Yeah, and I tested this in the demo account, and I think it's a defect. Go to apparatus real fast. And so he's not talking about a report. He's talking about go to maintenance. So go to an apparatus and, yep, you got it. And just go click the maintenance history button. Yep, not that one. You had it right.
Oh, you want them? Okay.
The
Yep.
maintenance history. So click that one.
Oh, clock.
Okay, so
Yep.
look up at the top there. See how it says vehicle number, model, pump manufacturer, and all that good stuff?
Yep.
Okay, so I entered all that data for one of our apparatus in the system, and it still doesn't appear. So it's a defect. So I thought he was talking about a report. He's talking about those fields. And even though there's data there for them, for some reason it's not populating in the header bar there. So if our team doesn't know about it, they will after today's Virtual Thursday.
Very good. Well, thanks for that. That always helps.
So is that, I don't know, Mac or Mark, if you guys were looking for that too, does that, would you concur with that?
Now that I see what you're looking at, yes, I concur 100%. I thought he was meaning in the body of the work order.
Yeah, no, I think he meant, I think
So did I.
Doug meant the header up there, because I'm like, yeah, that doesn't appear in the maintenance grid. Oh, but it appears in the header section. So I'll just, we'll get a bug ticket written up. Good catch, Doug. Awesome.
Thank you. All right. We're good?
Good, buddy. Thanks.
All right. Oh, I got to make my screen bigger. Hold on one sec. All right. We'll go back to the personnel list there. Where did I have John Smith? So as you see, this is a demo account like we've talked about. So there's numerous names in here. Which one did I use? Smith JA. All right. AKA Tom Lewis.
You know,
so we're on that
this is Mike's first and last Virtual Thursday.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so we were talking about the different module accesses there. So again, you'll see which ones you want to give them access. So you'll show up on the left side there. And I can go into any specific ones anybody has a question about towards the end here, so we can make sure we hit all the hot points. At the bottom here, this personnel files, this reads kind of wrong. There's a choice of none and read only. So this is not so they can read everybody in the department's personnel files. It's read only files of yourself. And when that comes down to, you'll come back to the home screen and you'll see my profile, and then you can see all the personnel who's logged in can see all their information there. Any kind of their personnel info, their contact info. So if any of it's incorrect, they can go back to their administrator and have them updated accordingly. Okay. I'm going quick. I apologize, bounce around. So again, if anybody has any questions. All right, so we'll go to the contact tab. So this is a tab that you can use for obviously contacts. So emergency contact information, whether it be spouses, any kind of family, be contacted in the event of emergency. This is going to be for your, you can put a phone number up here for emergency contact, and you can also put your personal contact information for yourself. And I like to push on or highlight this point because if you select the work put a work number in, and not if you put, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. So if you're going to put a home number in, it will not show up on the main screen. When I go back to that, I was going to talk further about this a little bit later, but you have all these different pick lists here. You can organize this list by up here. So if this is the only spot, if you have to put a work number in for it to show up here, otherwise it will not show up. There needs to be a quick back and forth for this. Back to contact, you can put the personnel's address information in there. Work address, if there's a different mailing address, you can put in there. Otherwise, you just click the hyperlink here and it'll copy everything from up here to here. So that's the contact tab in a nutshell. So the notes section, this is where you can kind of put some, I like to call them special notes. If there's any kind of discipline or any kind of special awards or any kind of general information you want to put in here. Now this is typically only, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, this is only access to administrative personnel, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so this isn't not everybody can't, if Captain Smith was in here, if Chief would have put in he received a 3-day suspension for absences, then that would show up in here. So nobody else can see that except for chief level officers. So we're gonna go in the history tab up here. So this is what's kind of good to use for, we like to put kind of maybe promotions, demotions if it happens, any kind of information here. Number of years active in the EMS industry, you can put whatever, but we like to put like a new entry in here. So let's say John Smith started, May 1st of last year. He's a full-time paid employee, and you can put its start date.
Yep, and there are certain reports that pull from this page, the history page, and then there are some reports that pull from the start date that you enter into the personnel info tab on the far left. Excuse me.
Correct. So let's say now this was firefighter John Smith. So firefighter Smith got promoted on May 1st of this year. So we're going to add a new entry in there. May 1st of this year, full-time paid, and I like to put like promoted to captain. So that way you can kind of keep a running timeline of your promotion dates, and you kind of, if you use a probationary period after promotion, you can always go back here to check whenever that occurred. So the certification tabs, real quick. Sorry, a little dry mouth there. Certification tab. So this is where you can add different certifications. So you have to kind of go to a different screen to get this all set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, for those who aren't familiar with it.
So Mike, we've got about 10 minutes. So just a heads up on that. And then guys, one thing I want to mention that anything, and I don't know if Mark Wolf is still with us. Mac, are you still with us? Mac, I think Mac. So Mark's going to be the lead trainer on the next part of the administration module. So it's very likely we won't be able to get to agency friends and the CAD settings, the submissions, and the mapping. But those are relatively easy. Agency friends is a little complicated to explain. So Mark, are you okay to cover that on your discussion 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll put it in to cover it.
Awesome. Okay.
I'll most likely be there too in the background.
We got a couple questions here I'm trying to respond to.
Yeah, and I'll help you out here too.
Okay, I'll continue on. So we'll go back to certification. So certifications are in your settings menu up top. So certification types or your different categories, if you would. So your firefighter or your fire officer 1, your hazardous materials, or your NMSIS EMS certifications. So your certifications are the specific ones. So let's say I'm going to add one here. I'm going to add a new one in there. I'm going to choose my fire officer 1 category. What I'm going to name this certificate. So it's going to be probationary fire officer. Any kind of description you want, you can do so with that. So you have all these choices in here. You can go back to your personnel list. Go back to John Smith. Okay, so we'll go back to our certification tab here. So now we're going to add John Smith's certification in there. So we're going to click Add New Certification. We're going to select the category. Remember we said it was a fire officer. And when we select that fire officer, it's going to populate the subcategory or the certification name. So we got probationary fire officer. We granted to him on May 1st of 2017. Now, if you are a state or a department or district that uses that certificates expire, you can put an expiration date, and that'll give you. That's another topic for another day, but that'll give you a notification when that thing expires. So you can also add an attachment to it or a picture of it. So I'll add a copy of it there. So it's a high quality image there. So add there. So now it shows that he has one certificate in the fire officer category. So I'm going to run back real quick to the home screen where we're talking about my profile. So my profile is I'm sorry, that's under my name, so it's not going to show up. But if John Smith ever needed a copy of that certificate later down the road for any kind of renewal purposes, he could actually go to his certifications tab, and it would show up here, and would give him. He would have the ability to download and save that and send it in to whatever he needs to do. So obviously we're back under my name, so it doesn't show up. But if John's name was, it would show as Fire Officer 1, probationary fire officer certificate. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Is there anything else you want to add?
That was great, Mike. Good once over. And guys, I know we had to cover a lot in a relatively short amount of time. It is being recorded, and I expect it to be uploaded later this evening. Hopefully at the latest. Worst case, it'll be sometime tomorrow. So that if you need to watch it, it'll be in our webinar archives. But we wanted to do a couple questions here. One was on the contacts tab. When you choose Use Home Address, go ahead and navigate quickly there, Mike. We've got these 2 questions we can answer as we come to a close.
I'm going to go back in the personal list.
Yeah, click a personnel. And so this is from Steven. And he's asking about this, and it's a known issue. You can ignore it, Mike, but I want to show you so everybody else can see it. And go to contact info.
Okay.
And if you notice down below, if you put in their address, okay, if you go ahead and click, like type in a mailing address, and then if you use, or no, I'm sorry, use a home ad. Go ahead and I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. Go ahead and type in a home address.
Okay.
And then if you use a home address down in work and or mailing address, actually it's in mailing address, you'll notice that it puts in a pound sign. So what if one of the things you want to know here is, one, if you look at work address, there's a space for apartment/suite number. Okay, down in the mailing address, it puts the pound sign, and you can tell I'm dated because it's really, I guess nowadays, the hashtag sign. But go ahead and click in there, and I can't remember, Mike, if you can delete it or not. Backspace, so you can go in and delete it. Yeah. So it's kind of an inconvenience, but what I think a programmer thought was that if you had an apartment number, go ahead and into the home address, there you go, and then click use home address again. See how it autofills it and gives you that little number sign, so pound sign. So that's it's kind of a quirky thing. That's about all I can say, but as long as you know what and why it's doing, you can certainly delete it. Does that make sense, Stephen? Yeah, okay, cool. Go run quickly report number 1400, and actually no, do this, Mike. Do a search for history. Do a keyword search, history, and it might be employment is what I'm really looking for. Hang on, it's going to give me a lot of do employment. Do keyword search employment. And so Lisa's got a question. Can you show the report that has the employment history? And one of those reports is 1400. So these are the reports that pull from either the start date within the admin personnel list, the personal info tab, or the two on the bottom are going to be pulling from the, or some of them, at least 1400 is going to be pulling from the employment history tab in the module. So there's two areas, two parts of that personnel's info where it could pull this information from, depending on the report that you pick. Great question, Lisa. I hope that answers it.
So there's that timeline we talked about earlier when he was start date and promoted to captain. So yeah, you can run a timeline for each person.
And Mark's going to send you, Lisa, he's going to send you a sample from his account, but this one is from Mike's account, from our demo account, I should say. So, and that's a good example of the start and end date. And there is a cool one that go back up real quick, Mike, to that search results for employment.
Oh.
There is one that, depending on what they put in there, click on 1221. Now this is from the history tab also, but this one gives you the breakdown, and there's something's causing an error for the average. I'm not sure if it's the 0 months. That's possible, but that would average your duration for the entire department, and so that's pulling from the history tab versus the personal info tab. So I hope that answers questions for everybody. All right. So here's the plan. Let's go back over to the admin page, Mike, and so we can give everybody kind of a expectation for the next event. So we covered everything, personnel, apparatus, and dropdowns. And thanks to these really great questions, which are the most important part of these training sessions, we couldn't cover agency friends and incident interface settings, but thankfully what Mark's going to cover in 2 weeks, some of those you can go through really quickly. So he's going to hit agency friends and the interface settings and talk a little bit about that and help you guys set up your agency friends if that's something you're interested in and you have nearby emergency reporting customers, other departments that use emergency reporting. So Mark, I appreciate you picking up our slack today and making it up next session. And with that, what I really just like to do in the last couple minutes is make sure we've answered everybody's questions.
It looks like we responded to all the questions. Or Lisa, I did get that email sent to you, so you should have it already, that sample report.
Way to go, Mark. Thanks for doing that so fast. That's great. Mike, great job on your first virtual Thursday, bud. I'm impressed.
Thanks.
So now you get to do the next few months worth.
All right.
Guys, any from our participants, any other comments too, or any other best practices you'd like to share? Any other questions before we call it a wrap for today? Mark or Mike, anything?
No, I think that about covers it. The hour goes real quick. So
boy, it sure does.
Remember that knowledge base and the support and help page will get you a lot of information.
Yep.
The only thing
We're constantly developing. Go ahead, Mark.
I want to mention, just back up what Tom was saying about the apparatus list and getting that vehicle number right. That's something we commonly see, especially with new accounts, of not getting that vehicle number put in right, so it keeps your maintenance records with that vehicle.
Yeah, we're firefighters. If it's not required, guess what we do? We skip over it. But I would love for this to be called out in a different color because it is a very valuable data point to have in the system, especially now that we have a report that can pull from vehicle number versus just the apparatus ID.
I don't have anything else. Thanks for attending, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Look for the recording here by the weekend, and just have a safe rest of the week and a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you, or at least you'll see Mark and probably Mike in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.